Before dawn broke over the coal fields, a miner had to eat like his life depended on it, because it did. Down the pit there was no stopping, no second chances, no soft word from the seam. Whatever a man swallowed at 5 in the morning had to carry him through 8 hours of hewing coal in the black. So the breakfasts were enormous, greasy, and built for survival. We are counting down 25 brutal miners' breakfasts, the dawn feasts that fueled Britain's pits. Let us begin with number 25. Number 25. Cold stewed tea and a crust was the barest breakfast a pitman ever faced, the meal for the mornings when the cupboard had given all it could. The pot had sat on the hob since the night before, brewed black and bitter, stewed until the leaves surrendered every last scrap of strength. A miner poured it cold or barely warm into a chipped enamel mug, softened a heel of yesterday's loaf against the rim, and ate standing up in the dark before the knocker-up had finished his round. By the 1920s, in the poorest terraces of the Durham coal field, this was breakfast on the days before payday, when wages had thinned to nothing. It filled a corner of the belly and little more. Oral histories recall men swearing the cold tea woke them better than any hot brew, though most admitted they only drank it because there was nothing else to be had. Number 24. Oatmeal porridge anchored the Scottish and northern pits with a grey, gluey heft that stuck to a man's ribs through the longest shift. Housewives set the oats to soak overnight, a handful of coarse pinhead meal costing barely a penny, then boiled it thick with water and a fist of salt before the fire was properly caught. In the mining rows of Fife and Lanarkshire, porridge was not a choice but a birthright, ladled steaming into wooden bowls and eaten with a horn spoon. Some men poured a moat of cold milk around the edge, dipping each spoonful in for contrast. Others took it plain and scalding. By 1930, surveys of colliery diets found oatmeal appeared at nearly every pit breakfast north of the border. It was cheap, it was filling, and it burned slow in the gut. Exactly what a man needed before the cage dropped him 1,000 feet into the dark. Number 23. Bread and dripping stood as the iron ration of the coal field breakfast, the meal that fed more pitmen than any joint of meat ever could. Every drop of fat from the rare Sunday roast was saved, cooled in a chipped basin, and spread thick and pale across doorstep slices before dawn. The dripping carried the ghost of last week's beef, salty and rich, with a dark jelly at the bottom of the pot that the children fought over. By the early 1950s, a loaf cost around a shilling, and a miner could go down the pit on nothing more than 2 slices and a scrape. Mothers rationed the fat with a careful hand, knowing it had to last the week. For a man facing the shaft at 5 in the morning, bread and dripping was warmth, salt, and just enough grease to keep the cold of the cage from settling in his chest. Number 22. POBS, bread soaked soft in hot milk, was the breakfast of the youngest pit lads and the old men whose teeth had long since gone. Housewives tore stale bread into a bowl, poured over milk heated to steaming, and stirred in a spoon of sugar if the tin allowed. In the Lancashire and Yorkshire coalfields, pobs was the first breakfast a boy ate before his first shift underground. Aged 12 or 13, sent down to open the ventilation doors in the pitch black. The soft, sweet mush went down easy on a nervous stomach, warming him from the inside before the long walk to the shaft. Diaries from the era recall grandmothers making pobs for 3 generations at the same table, the fathers scorning it as baby food yet eating it gladly on frozen mornings. It cost almost nothing and asked nothing of a man but a spoon and a few quiet minutes. Number 21. Condensed milk on bread was the sweet indulgence of the pit breakfast. a rare treat that made a hard morning bearable. A tin of Nestle's cost around 5p, and a thrifty wife could stretch it across a fortnight of breakfasts, drizzling the thick amber syrup over a slice of white bread in lazy loops. In the Welsh valleys, children begged for the tin to lick, while their fathers took it as a quick, sugary fuel before the descent. The sweetness hit hard and fast, jolting a man awake in a way the cold tea never could. Oral histories from the Rhondda recall the sight of a father sharing the last of the tin between the little ones, keeping only a scrape for himself. Condensed milk on bread carried no pretense of nourishment. It was pure energy, a spoonful of sweetness against a life spent hewing coal in the dark. Number 20. Bread and treacle brought a dark, sticky richness to the dawn table, the taste of golden syrup poured slow over a fresh-cut slice. Lyle's black treacle cost a few pence a tin and lasted for months in the pantry, its lid always sticky, its contents always slow to pour. In the Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire coal fields, treacle bread was the reward on a Friday, when the week's work was nearly done and the tin could be spared. The treacle sank into the crumb, dark and bittersweet, coating a man's teeth and fingers alike. Some spread it over dripping for the ultimate contrast of salt and sweet. Children licked the spoon and the paper alike. For a miner, the sugar rush was practical as much as pleasurable, a fast burst of fuel to carry him from the kitchen fire to the top of the shaft, while the rest of the street still slept. Number 19. Sops. Bread soaked in hot bacon fat was the breakfast that wasted absolutely nothing, the meal born from the sizzle of the frying pan. When a family could afford a rasher, the fat left behind was never poured away. A slice of bread was pressed into the hot pan, soaking up every last drop of golden grease until it turned soft and glistening. In the pit rows of South Yorkshire, sops was the crafty second breakfast, the way one rasher of bacon could feed a whole family. The father took the meat, the children took the bread that had drunk its juices. The smell of hot fat and toasting bread filled the kitchen in the black hours before the shift. It was salty, greasy, and deeply satisfying, exactly the kind of fuel a man needed. Nothing was thrown away in a pit household, least of all the fat that meant flavor and warmth. Number 18. Staffordshire oat cakes rolled off the bakestone in the Potteries coal field, a soft, savory pancake found nowhere else in Britain. Made from oatmeal, flour, and yeast, the batter was left to ferment overnight before being ladled thin onto a hot griddle. By the 1930s, oatcake shops dotted the streets of Stoke, their windows steamed, selling the warm rounds for a penny each to miners heading for the early shift. A man folded his oatcake around a rasher of bacon or a smear of cheese, eating it in his hand on the walk to the pit. The taste was tangy and nutty, unlike anything sold beyond the county line. Oral histories recall the queue outside the oatcake shop before dawn, colliers and potters alike waiting for the first batch. Regional to its core, the Staffordshire oatcake fueled the men who dug the coal that fired the kilns that made the county famous. Number 17. Bloaters and herring brought the sharp tang of the sea to the inland coal fields. A cheap and oily fish that fed a man cheaply and well. Bloaters, whole herring cured in brine and lightly smoked, cost mere pennies and arrived by rail in wooden boxes packed with salt. Housewives grilled them whole over the fire until the skin blistered and the rich, dark flesh steamed. In the Durham and Northumberland pits, a bloater on toast was the breakfast of a man who wanted something that would stay with him, the oily fish burning slow through the shift. The smell clung to the kitchen and to a man's clothes long after he had gone. Children learned early to pick the fine bones from the flesh. For a few pence, a herring delivered protein and fat in a form that no cheaper cut of meat could match, feeding the pit rows through the leanest years. Number 16. Bread and bovril, or a mug of beef tea, gave a miner the illusion of a proper meat breakfast for a fraction of the cost. A spoonful of dark, salty extract stirred into boiling water made a mug of savory broth that warmed a man from the throat down. By the 1930s, a jar of bovril sat in most pit kitchens, its meaty tang standing in for the beef that few could afford daily. A miner dunked his bread into the hot beef tea, softening the crust and lending it a rich, savory depth. In the freezing kitchens of the northern coal fields, that steaming mug was as much about heat as flavor, wrapping cold hands around the enamel before the walk to the shaft. Oral histories recall wives keeping the jar for the worst mornings, the deepest frosts, when a man needed something hot and strong inside him to face the drop into the earth. Number 15. Cold, fat bacon was the breakfast of a man in a hurry. A slab of streaky bacon fried the night before and eaten stone cold at dawn. The fat had set white and firm around the pink meat, dense and chewy and rich enough to line a man's stomach for hours. In the Welsh and Yorkshire pits, cold bacon was the practical answer to a 5 o'clock start, when there was no time to light the pan and wait. A miner cut it into thick slices, laid it between bread, and ate it walking. The fat was the point, not a flaw, the very thing that made it worth eating before a shift of hard labor. Diaries from the coal fields recall men praising the cold fat over the hot, swearing it sat easier in the belly. It was brutal, greasy fare, but it was fuel a man could count on. Number 14. Fried bread crackled in the pan as the pitman's crowning indulgence, a slice of bread crisped golden in a slick of hot dripping or lard. The bread drank the fat greedily, turning crunchy at the edges and soft in the middle, a treat that cost little more than the loaf and the grease already in the pan. In the Nottinghamshire coalfields, fried bread was the reward when a rasher had been fried first. The bread laid in the pan to soak up every drop the bacon left behind. A man ate it hot, the fat running down his chin, a jolt of salt and crunch before the cold walk to work. Oral histories recall children begging for the fried slice, the smell of it filling the terrace kitchen before dawn. Simple, greasy, and deeply satisfying, fried bread turned the cheapest ingredient in the house into something worth waking for. Number 13. Bubble and squeak sizzled in the pan at dawn, Sunday's leftover potatoes and cabbage fried into a crisp, savory cake. The name came from the sound, the vegetables hissing and spitting as they hit the hot fat. In the pit villages of Lancashire, bubble and squeak was the Monday morning breakfast, a way of making sure not a scrap of the weekend's dinner went to waste. Housewives mashed the cold potato and greens together, pressed them into the pan, and fried them until the underside turned dark and crisp. A miner ate it with a smear of brown sauce, the crunchy edges the prize everyone fought over. The smell of frying cabbage divided households, but no man turned it down before a shift. Cheap, filling, and born entirely of thrift, bubble, and squeak was the coalfield's answer to the question of how to feed a working man on the remains of yesterday. Number 12. Bread and cheese with raw onion was the breakfast that a man could carry in his snap tin as easily as eat at his own table. A wedge of hard, crumbly cheese, a hunk of bread, and a raw onion peeled and eaten like an apple. This was fare that needed no fire and no cooking. In the Welsh valleys and the Midlands pits, the pungent onion was said to keep a man's blood strong and his chest clear of the coal dust. The sharp bite woke him better than tea, bringing tears to the eyes in the cold kitchen. A miner bit the onion whole, chased it with bread and cheese, and walked to the shaft with the smell of it on his breath. Oral histories recall the crunch of raw onion echoing through the cage as men descended, the whole crew reeking of it by the time they reached the coalface. Number 11. Pig's fry was the Offal feast of the pit breakfast, a rich and brutal fry-up of liver, heart and lights bought for coppers from the butcher. When a family kept a pig in the yard, as many mining households did, killing day brought a glut of innards that had to be eaten fast before they spoiled. Housewives fried the liver and heart with onions in a hot pan, the strong metallic smell filling the kitchen before dawn. In the Durham and South Wales coal fields, pig's fry was the breakfast of a man who needed iron in his blood and fat in his belly. The liver had to be caught at the right moment. A minute too long, and it turned to leather. Served with fried bread to mop the pan, pig's fry gave a collier a breakfast fit for the hardest shift, cheap yet dense with the goodness the body craved underground. Number 10. Faggots, eaten cold from the night before, brought a savory richness to the dawn table that few breakfasts could match. Made from minced pig's offal, breadcrumbs and sage, wrapped in caul fat and baked. Faggots were a Midlands and Welsh speciality, sold cheap from butchers and market stalls. A man kept one back from the evening meal, wrapping it in paper for the morning, and ate it cold with a hunk of bread. The dense, herby meat sat heavy in the belly, exactly what a pitman wanted before a long shift. In the black country coalfields, cold faggots and bread was the breakfast of thrift, stretching the cheapest scraps of the pig into fuel for hard labor. Oral histories recall the peppery, sage-heavy smell, the way a good faggot could carry a man from the kitchen to the coalface without a hunger pang. Cold or hot, it wasted nothing. Number 9. Black pudding sizzled dark in the pan, a breakfast so rich with iron and fat that it seemed made for men who spent their lives in the dark. Slices of the blood sausage, studded with pearls of white fat, fried until the edges crisped and split. By the 1930s, nearly every pit village high street had a butcher selling black pudding by the link, and in Lancashire and Yorkshire, it was a source of fierce local pride. A miner ate it with fried bread and a mug of tea, the earthy, mineral flavor as familiar as the pit whistle. The iron in the blood was said to fortify a man against the hardship underground, and the fat gave him the slow-burning fuel he needed. Cheap, filling, and unmistakably northern, black pudding was the breakfast that divided Britain's tables yet anchored the coalfields, a dish that meant strength, thrift, and home. Number 8. Tripe brought the strongest test of the stomach to the dawn table, a pale, honeycombed slab of cow's stomach eaten cold or gently warmed. Bought for pennies from the tripe shops that once lined northern high streets, it was dressed simply with salt, pepper, and a splash of vinegar. In the Lancashire coal fields, tripe was the breakfast of hardened men who had grown up on it, the soft, rubbery texture no obstacle to those who knew no different. Some warmed it in milk with onions before the shift, others ate it cold, straight from the paper. The smell, faint but persistent, clung to the kitchen. Oral histories recall the divide it created, the men who relished it, and the wives who could barely stand to prepare it. Yet for a few pence it delivered a breakfast that filled the belly, and in the pit rows, nothing that cheap was ever turned away. Number 7. Brawn, the trembling meat set in its own jelly, was the breakfast that made use of the parts of the pig no one else would touch. Boiled from the head and trotters for hours, the shredded meat was pressed into a basin and left to set in a rich, savory jelly. Sliced cold at dawn and laid on bread with a smear of mustard, brawn was a dense and porky start to the shift. In the coalfields of the Midlands and the North, brawn was killing day food, made when a household pig was slaughtered and every scrap put to use. A miner ate it without a second thought, though children often shrank from the sight of it. The taste was strong, the texture unsettling to the uninitiated, but the goodness was undeniable. Brawn was thrift made solid, a breakfast conjured entirely from what a wealthier household would have thrown to the dogs. Number 6. Panacalty, reheated at dawn, gave the northeast miner a breakfast built from the bones of the night before. A slow-cooked layer of corned beef, potato and onion, panacalty was baked long and eaten over 2 days, its flavor only deepening as it sat. In the pit villages of Durham and Northumberland, the leftover dish was warmed through in the black hours before the shift, the smell of corned beef and onion filling the terrace kitchen. A miner ate it straight from the pan, the soft potato soaked in savory juices, the meat falling apart at the touch of a fork. It cost almost nothing, made from a tin of corned beef and whatever roots the garden could spare. Oral histories from the Northeast recall panacalty as the taste of home, the dish a mother made when money was tightest, feeding her men on little more than a tin and a sack of spuds. Number 5. Cold meat and potato pie, carried in the snap tin or eaten at the kitchen table, was the breakfast of a man who wanted a proper meal before the drop. A wedge of yesterday's pie, its short crust firm, and its filling of beef, potato, and onion gravy set solid in the cold, sat heavy and satisfying in the belly. In the Yorkshire and Lancashire coalfields, the meat and potato pie was a badge of pride, and a slice kept back for breakfast was a small luxury. A miner ate it cold, the pastry crumbling in his blackened hands, the savory filling all the richer for having stood overnight. Some took it down the pit in the snap tin to eat at the coal face, sharing the cage with the smell of cold pastry and gravy. Filling, portable, and deeply comforting, the cold pie was the breakfast that told a man his wife had done him proud. Number 4. Cold suet pudding, sliced thick and eaten at dawn, was the calorie bomb that no other breakfast could rival. A steamed pudding heavy with suet and flour, sometimes studded with dried fruit or spread with jam, sat dense and firm once cold. In the pit villages across Britain, a slice of last night's pudding was the breakfast that guaranteed a man would not go hungry underground. The suet burned slow and hot, releasing its energy over the long hours of the shift, exactly what the body craved in the cold and dark. A miner ate it plain or with a smear of jam, washing it down with strong tea. Oral histories recall the weight of it, the way a wedge of cold roly-poly could silence the fiercest appetite. Brutal in its density and unashamed in its heaviness, cold suet pudding was fuel in its purest form, thrift and survival pressed into a single stodgy slice. Number 3. Fried sausages, hissing and spitting in the pan, were the breakfast that filled a pit kitchen with the smell every hungry man longed for. Cheap bangers, heavy with rusk and light on meat, fried dark and glistening in a slick of their own fat. By the 1950s, a pound of sausages cost little enough that even a mining family could manage them once or twice a week. A miner ate 2 or 3 between thick slices of bread, the fat soaking through the crumb, a mug of tea at his elbow. In the coal fields of the Midlands and the North, the fried sausage was the breakfast that felt like plenty, a hot and hearty send-off before the cage swallowed a man for the day. Children woke to the smell of them and hoped for a bite. Simple, greasy, and gloriously filling, the sausage breakfast was as close to a feast as most mornings came. Number 2. Strong, sweet stewed tea was the one thing no miner ever went underground without. the drink that fueled the coalfields as surely as coal fueled the nation. Brewed thick and dark in a battered pot, stewed until it could almost stand a spoon upright, then sweetened with 2 or 3 heaped spoons of sugar. In every pit village from Kent to the Scottish coalfields, the morning brew was ritual, a scalding mug drunk before dawn, and a bottle of it carried down the pit in the snap tin, kept warm against the body. The sugar gave a fast jolt of energy, the heat a defense against the cold of the cage. Oral histories recall men drinking 6 or 7 mugs a day, the tea black as the coal they hewed. It was cheap, it was quick, and it was essential. No breakfast in the coal fields was ever complete without it. Number 1. Bacon, eggs, and fried bread crowned the miner's breakfast as the ultimate send-off, the full pit fry-up that fueled a man for the hardest labor on earth. On a good week, when wages stretched and the pantry allowed, a wife rose in the black hours to fry rashers of streaky bacon, cracked eggs into the hot fat, and laid slices of bread in the pan to drink up every drop. The smell of it filled the terrace before dawn, drifting out into the frozen street where the knocker-up still tapped at bedroom windows. A miner ate it at his own table, the yolks running gold, the bacon salty and crisp, the fried bread crunching between his teeth. This was the breakfast that told a man he was ready, that his belly was full and his strength was up, that whatever the seam threw at him, he had eaten enough to meet it. For 8 hours in the choking dark, hewing coal by the light of a lamp, that plateful of bacon and eggs was the memory of warmth he carried down with him. It cost dear, and it was worth every penny, the crowning feast of the coalfield dawn. Across all 25 breakfasts, from the cold stewed tea of the leanest mornings to the crowning fry-up of bacon and eggs, one truth runs through every plate. These were not meals of pleasure, but of survival, fuel loaded into the body before a man vanished into the earth. Bread, dripping, fat, and offal appear again and again, the cheapest scraps turned into strength. They were brutal, greasy, and heavy by design, because a miner's morning was brutal too. So tell me in the comments, which of these did your grandfather eat before the pit?